provide for those things that you have been so gracious to bless and to preserve in our nation that have become under attack, and just pray for a great learning experience, but most of all, we want you to be glorified. So please work in and among us all today, that all would ascend for your glory. And we ask this in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for that wonderful prayer. We often stay in God's presence. Amen. I'm Marlene Sullivan, and I'm the director of Center State Performing Arts Foundation. I've known Tony about 35 years. We've been friends on the mission. And this morning, one of my students, Bethany Winters, is going to sing the national anthem. If you would please stand.
Oh, say, can you see why the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Okay. All right. Thank you for coming. My name is Tony Pellegrino, and we are here together with the America's Constitutional Law Group. And on the cover sheet of the syllabus, we have our website on there, which is aclg-liberty.com. And so anyways, I want to thank everybody for coming. We have our entire team here today. So I'm going to introduce our team. If you guys could stand up. We have Ty Robin here. He could be speaking later on this afternoon. In the back is Jenny Victory. Thank you for all your hard work. And we have Chuck in the very back. So if you have questions, you can approach any of our team. And this is the CEO, David Avila. And so has anybody been to any of my seminars before? Let me see hands. So, okay, because I need to know if I would need to revisit a bunch of stuff. So here we are. So this session is called Who Are We and What Are We Doing Here? Okay, so we are the ACLG and you are we the people. We are all we the people. And so that is the highest level of authority in this country. Anybody familiar with Romans 13? About submitting yourself to governing authorities? Everybody ever read that in the Bible? Yeah. Share a little revelation out of that, because I was taught wrong like the first 20 years I was in church. So the governing authority in this nation, according to the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, is we the people. We are the governing authorities. And so this great experiment of the United States of America was birthed by the Virginia Declaration of Rights, which was built upon succession of law, going all the way back to The Ten Commandments, right? That's called ecclesiastical law. So we have ecclesiastical law, we have the Magna Carta, we have the Virginia Declaration of Rights. And when you start a nation, the foundation is you're going to lay down the law, and what is this country going to build about? What are we building on foundation? And the Virginia Declaration of Rights says we're going to build this nation on Christianity. Like I'm sure when they started Iran or Iraq, the foundation of their founding documents of their government is built on Islam and Sharia law. And so we are in a constitutional crisis. Anybody think so? So here we are. You know, we were given a republic and we've lost it. We are no longer functioning as a republic. But the situation we got is they're still recognizing the Constitution in some of our courts, more so in the federal courts than in your local courts because they're administrative courts. So we're going to get into all the controversies. We're going to have Q&A at 4 o'clock. Any questions you want to get asked, it's going to be open forum for that half hour. We're going to have a panel experts up here. So, yes, we're here to equip, educate, and empower you guys to go and take your government back. Does anybody remember Trump's inaugural speech in 2016? Anybody hear that? Well, if you didn't hear it, I'll share an excerpt. So Trump, when he got elected, he came out and he slapped Republicans and Democrats right in the face. He says, this isn't a transference of power from one administration to another, but it's a transference of power from one administration to we the people. So he said he wanted to give power back to the people, but except we had a major problem right there. Were we ready to assume power as we the people? And so this is what we need to get, our identity, who we are. Are we a U.S. citizen, or are we one of the people, or are we both? And David's going to come up and share that in a little bit. And so you got to have identity on whatever you're doing. And I have a status affidavit for that also. We're going to share a little bit about that. And so my status affidavit, I'll pass it around maybe the session when we're sharing on this. But a status affidavit, it basically tells you who you are and how the law applies to you. And so I use that affidavit in the federal courts. I was actually going to fly out of San Jose Airport one time. And so I went up to get in line with TSA, and they're like, they wanted my picture ID. And so I handed them my driver's license, and the TSA agent goes, excuse me, Mr. Pellegrino, do you know your driver's license is suspended? Not suspended, he goes, it's expired 7 years ago. I said, really? Like I didn't know. I says, does that make me another person? Another people? Am I magically somebody else? Well, we can't let you fly today because it's not a valid ID, okay? He says, do you have anything not expired? And I says, well, I thought you'd never ask. So I pull out my affidavit of status, and that basically says I'm a creation of God. Anybody here a creation of God? Do you think any court can rebut that? I don't think so. And it says I'm a creation of God, and I am not an artificial person. And I'm going to let David share about that. But I says, but I have unalienable rights to travel. And the Supreme Court, Kent versus Dulles, says I have a right to travel, and I'm traveling today. So you can either let me get on my plane and exercise my rights, or you can violate my rights. He says, well, let me get my supervisor. So I hand him the affidavit of status. It has my right thumbprint, okay? It has my signature. It has a notary stamp on it, and then it's filed at the county recorder's office. And now I went one step even further. When I sued a judge, I put it on the federal docket. So it's basically all over the place. And so he looked at it, and the supervisor was like, well, I don't know what we can do here. I says, well, you're the gatekeeper. I says, I'm just giving you fair notice that if you restrict my right to travel, I'm not suing TSA, I'm not suing Homeland Security, I'm suing you. He goes, you're suing me? I said, yes. I said, did you not swear an oath to the Constitution? I says, my right to travel is protected under the 9th Amendment. So you're the gatekeeper. I'm not telling you how to do your job, but I promise you it's not a threat. I will sue you personally, and I notice you're wearing a wedding ring. I think I might add your wife to that lawsuit too. Would he be happy about that? Probably not. So I said, you can say a lot of things, just do it with a smile on your face and be honorable, right? So they looked at each other, and so they could have turned me away, but I didn't blink. And they says, well, would you mind going through a little extra screening in the small room? And I'm like, oh, as long as it's reasonable, I'll consent to that. And that's one of the things, we're the governed of the consented, right? So there's 3 C's we need to know in life. That's covenant. When we have a covenant with our maker, our creator, we have a covenant in holy matrimony with our spouse. Okay, and we have contracts, and then we have consensual encounters. Anything outside of those 3 things, your rights are being violated, okay? Unless you cause injury, harm, and loss to another person. So we need to start understanding who we are as we the people. We don't have to be arrogant. We don't have to be dishonorable about it. But we notify people that my rights are not going to be trespassed today. And when you're due signing a contract, you need to sign it UCC 1-308. Or you can write out all rights reserved. And so I'm going to ask David to come up, our CEO. And he's going to share about, it should be status affidavit explained in your booklet. And so he's going to, do you need those notes for that? Okay, there we go. All right, well, I'm going to turn it over to David and welcome again. And that's who we are. And so we're going to get equipped to take this country back.
Good day, everyone. I've been introduced, so I won't go through that pain again. I gave hopefully everybody has a packet here. Basically, there's 2 sessions that I have. The top session is how to be free, and then later this afternoon is going to be land ownership / land patents. So I'm kind of use this for a guideline for my speech, their presentation, and you can follow along with me. I didn't come prepared for this part, but that song that that young lady sung doesn't affect me too much. But most people don't know this story. A friend of mine tells this story. What's the gentleman's name that wrote that? Scott? Help me. Scott? Pardon? Francis Scott Keys. He went to the British ship, and his mission was to release the captured people or captured soldiers that were on the ships in the harbor. I don't even know the name of the harbor. It's immaterial. And so he was negotiating with the captain, and the captain just looked at it and says, well, this is really a waste of time, because at dawn, or excuse me, this evening, we were going to stop bombarding this fort. And if you could help me with the fort?
Fort Sumter.
Pardon?
Fort Sumter.
Fort Sumter, okay. I wasn't there, so I don't remember. I was born a few years later. But at any rate, so the captain says, well, this is really an immaterial negotiation here, because by morning time, that fort is going to be leveled. Okay? So Scott went down and talked to the boys who were in prison or in chains and whatever underneath the deck. And he was talking with them, and then he made the bombardment started. And there were so many ships that you could, no matter how far you looked, there were British ships. And by the morning, when Scott went up on deck, and he looked out there and he saw that flag. The flag was still standing. And every British ship had emptied every round and used up every pound of powder to level that flag, and it was still standing. And then when he went ashore, he went into Fort Sumter, and that flag was being supported by dead bodies. So that's why that flag is significant. If you see some person, I'll say person, burning that flag, hit him in the head, will you? And then tell them that story and tell them to go somewhere else. Anyway, I apologize for that. So let's find out who we are here today. And I'm noticing that there's quite a population of the opposite sex. I'm a man, and I see a lot of women here. And what's, I guess, astonishing and disappointing, what does that mean? That means that the men in this country, of course, historically, who goes to war? The men. And the kind of the shy guys stay behind. And so who gets killed? The men with all the testosterone. Statistically, right now, I believe there's about 60%, or the testosterone level is 40% of what it used to be. Well, we kill all those guys off, and genetics is genetics. Most people comprehend what the genetics are. So I've seen in the last decade that women are standing up. So I applaud you for being here. And I also thank you for bringing your man with you. So, let's find out, just a series of quick questions here. The rough count, how many persons are here? Just raise your hand and I can see it. Okay. About 30, that's great. So the next question is, how many people live here in the city of Sonora? Okay, well, we got a lot of people from out of the area, that's great. And then how many people are, well, obviously, if you're from Sonora, you're from the county of Tuolumne. So how many of you live in the United States? Yeah, most of you, that's good, that's good.
The United States of America.
So, and how many of you are citizens of the United States? All right. How many of you own a firearm? How many brought with you? All right. So then, how many of you have a Social Security number? Everybody, right, here we go. How many of you pay income taxes? Okay. And then how many of you speak English? That's probably everything. Okay. Those were leading questions, because what I wanted to determine or tell you, there's two things that you should learn today, is that there are two of everything. Two of everything, all right? There's English, which most of us comprehend and speak daily. But English is, there's also legalish. They sound exactly the same. But they have two meanings. One is for we the people, we speak English and we understand English since we were babies. And then two, on the legal side, they speak legalish. Two different meanings. So those questions here, now most of you are products of public schools. Now, again, words have two meanings. Public schools, we think they're public, they're open to everybody, they're free, they're paid for by our sweat and blood. But, and then that's on the private side, but then on the public side, the government side, public schools teaches the corporate policy, because we have no government. We think they're government, but in reality, they're all corporations. So when they say public, and my studying the law per se and comprehending the meanings of words, when I see public, I comprehend that they're talking about the corporate government, because there is no government. They're all for-profit corporations. So my first question was, how many persons are here? Okay, dual meaning. Persons, we look at each other, we see persons. But on the government side, the definition of a person is that you are a corporation. You are dead and a corporation, and you are under their jurisdiction. So when you raise your hand and you say you're a person, you just admitted that you are part of their corporation, you are under their jurisdiction, you are not a man created by God. You are a fiction created by the government. That's the definition of a person. And the next question is the city of Sonora. Okay, Sonora, you look out here and you see these beautiful trees, land, buildings, and whatnot, historic stuff. That's the Sonora, the city. But the city of Sonora is a corporation. I'm going to have you organize here for a moment. Well, I guess I'll get to it when I. So, the state of California is a corporation. And you guys admitted every time you write a letter and put down your address, you always put CA for California, correct? All right, when I was a young man, it was California, fully written out, or CALIF, period. That was the definition. But with the Buck Act in I forget the date, the federal government, Washington, D.C., established, overlaid all of the states, overlaid it as a federal district, And if you live in quote unquote CA, that is the corporate California. And again, you just volunteered to be under their jurisdiction. I never write CA. It is always California or CALF, period. And then when you write the zip code, which is a zone improvement project, that is a smaller federal district. So I never, well, I put the zip code on my address, but I put brackets around it. That's called a four-corner law. So whenever you see a contract or anything and there's a box or there's brackets around it, whatever's inside that box is not relative to that document. So just remember that. When you sign your tax forms, that little box has nothing to do with the document itself. The United States, we all comprehend that the United States, we believe, are the 50 states. Well, you're wrong. Well, I'll take that back. In English, it is. But in legalese, the United States, if they were being truthful, they would say the United States Incorporated. Because in 1871, after the Civil War, they were broke. They needed to incorporate so they could deal with the world markets. So they incorporated. And so again, under the corporation, you have no rights. And that's the purpose of everything they do. Everything government does is deceit and lies. Right? They lie to you, and everything is under deceit and fraud. So most of us know the Second Amendment because it's always spoken about. The Second Amendment, we the people have the right to keep and bear arms. Words mean things. So we comprehend what arms are. And the government, the BATF, Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco and Firearms, they know that if they write a law that basically inhibits anything to do with an arm, it's unconstitutional, it will be shot down. Well, that's a ploy, but it will be shot down in the federal courts, in the Supreme Court. So they don't make one law. There's not one law against the Second Amendment. And everybody thinks there's 36,000 or something. Well, there are 36,000 laws, but each one of them has to do with a firearm. The Constitution protects an arm, not a firearm. So every law that they make is against a firearm, which has a very small definition. One of which is if it's a rifle or a shotgun, you take the barrel and you cut it down to less than 18 inches from the breech to the end of the barrel. If it's shorter than 18 inches, that's a firearm. It used to be a rifle, now you made it a firearm. Same thing with a pistol. If you cut the barrel off of the shotgun, it's clear bore, that's a firearm. So there's only about 4 firearms in existence. But what do? They train us. You hear the news, oh, this firearm did this. And then you read the law, I read the laws, statutes actually, they're not laws, they're statutes because the BATF sets them up. The BATF is a corporation, so everything they do is not lawful. It's a policy, it's a corporate policy. But everything is against firearms. So that all their laws read that if a person has a firearm, and when you hear the news, oh, this guy had a firearm, and somebody talks about, oh, this firearm. Firearms are not protected in the Constitution, people. I'm not going to call you persons, because by the end of this, you're going to be people. You're going to comprehend the difference. Social Security number. Oh, they were really smart on this one. Really smart. Now, if I were to come to you back in 1933, or I'm not even sure when the Social Security Act came in, but at any rate, they knew, they being the IRS and the feds, knew that there were probably 10 or 12 David Apples in the country. We need to be able to nail them down. So how do we do that? We give them a specific number. And so if I came to you and said, oh, would you vote for this? I need to find you so I can rip you off, steal all your income, all your wages, your sweat and blood, and take 40% of it. But I need to be able to locate you. So if I give you this number, I can locate you. Will you vote for that? Anybody here, would you vote? Anybody here with a brain would vote for that? No, I don't think so. So but what they do tell you is that, oh, we have this tremendous program, and if you just pay a few pennies a month out of your wages, that we will guarantee you when you retire at 65, we will send you a check every month for the rest of your life. I'm in. But that's not the purpose. The purpose was to give you a number. Okay, the story goes on. To everything. There's a person, it'll be the person over here, and there's a people. That people are we, as we look at ourselves, created by God. That is a people, a man and a woman. So whose jurisdiction are you under? You were created by God, maximum law. Once, or what one creates, you own. Makes sense, right? If I make this table, it's mine. If I made my car, it's mine. So a corporation has to gain jurisdiction, but they know that I can't be under two jurisdictions. So I'm already here. So they have to make me volunteer to be a corporate member because they are corporations. Every agency is a corporation. California, state of California, the United States Incorporated, the court system, the Superior Court of Stanislaus County is a corporation. They're all corporations, so they can't deal with me as a human being because I'm under God's jurisdiction. So they have to drag me over to be under corporate jurisdiction. How do they do that? Well, when you were born, let me see if I get online here. Well, everybody has a packet, right? We're going to get back online. I get off on these tangents, I apologize for that. So, I want to make you aware of who you are. You're not a person, you're a people. You're a man, a woman, under God's jurisdiction. So if you go to the first thing, and what I want to do is instill a thinking pattern in you, because we're all just get along to go along, and whatever we're told we believe because we believe people are honest. And unfortunately, I said that everything the corporations do / government is fraud and deceit. So they talk about global warming. Now, in 2018, the global warming gases were 48,940 tons of pollution. Holy cow, that's a lot. Let's look at it with an open mind and a critical mind. The Earth's atmosphere, the volume is 51 quadrillion cubic meters, and it's 5.5 quadrillion tons. So you do the math, so the pollution is 0.0008898,182% of the atmosphere. How much is that? You can't even measure, it's nothing, all right? Now, I don't want to go to LA because there's a lot of pollution here, so that's a concentration of pollution. So am I saying pollution is a good thing? No. But we can manage a good thing, right? We are men. We survived. We built a lot of stuff. And we've solved a lot of problems over the decades, over the centuries. And so my solution to LA, put electric cars in LA. They don't travel very far. They can plug it in at night. You eliminate all the pollution. You want to put an electric truck there? That's fine. You can't drive an electric truck from the East Coast to the West Coast, it doesn't work. But you can have stations or terminals around LA, and you have a diesel truck driving over here, drop the trailer off, pick up another trailer, take it back to the East Coast, and then you have one of those little electric trucks come out of LA to pick it up and move it to LA. That's a solution, people. Not for you guys to have an electric car to go 500 miles in one day, it just ain't gonna work. So let's not be stupid. Right? Let's stand up. In fact, Archie Bunker, does everybody remember Archie Bunker? Right? Oh, he's got a wonderful saying. He says, the best way to stand up is to get off your donkey. I'll use donkey because, but anyway, that's what he said. He made a lot of sense. If anybody watched that, you appreciate his program. So another comparison for the contamination is that an Olympic-sized swimming pool holds 660,440 gallons. Okay, so if we make that represent the atmosphere, if I were to stand at the edge of that pool and dump in, 4.5 tablespoons of water into that pool every day, that's the same proportion of pollution that happens in the world every day. So really, there's 4.5 teaspoons or tablespoons of water in an Olympic swimming pool. Is that really going to impact that? In fact, I made a larger deposit. Last time I swam in the pool, I made a larger deposit than that. And nobody said anything. And it was concentrated, by the way, in one area, kind of like LA. Okay, I believe the next one should be, basically, it's a copy of my passport, front pages of the passport. You get that? Now, people say, oh, there's not two of everything. The government puts everything in front of you, and you just have not been taught to comprehend what's in front of you. So if you look at that, if you open up your passport, the first page reads, the Secretary of State of the United States of America hereby requests all whom it may concern to permit the citizen/national of the United States named herein to pass without delay or hindrance, and in case of need to give all lawful and aid and protection. So did you notice there, I have it highlighted for your convenience, my convenience, citizen/national. Whoa, they say right there in front, because this is a lawful, really the highest level of lawful identification in the United States of America, not the United States Corporation, the United States of America, 50 states. And it says right there that we have two classifications of people. Number one is a citizen, that is a person, that's the corporation, they have 100% jurisdiction over that. And then the second one is a national. I'm a national. I don't know that there's any other nationals in this church today, other than God. Oh, we got one in the back. I got one in the back. Chapter. So as a national, I claim my rights in the Constitution, because when you go to court and you go to a supervisor's meeting or you go to a school board's meeting, do you see a flag like that one? Maybe a little bigger. That flag, Title 5, Chapter 1, United States Code, the United States flag is 1 unit wide by 1.5 units long, 7 red stripes with 5 or 6 white stripes, a blue block with white stars. It's 3 colors. Next time you go into one of these meetings, you're going to notice the flag that has gold fringe around it. That is not a United States of America flag. That is considered a captured flag. And under a captured flag, maritime, you have no rights. Now, most people comprehend that when you go on a cruise and whatnot, the captain is the captain. And he is judge and jury. No? Pardon? Right, yeah. Well, he's under maritime law, but if you do something wrong, he could order you thrown overboard and drowned. So when you go into court, you see that 4-colored flag. You don't see that a 4-colored flag. You're under maritime law. That judge, not the jury, the judge makes the decision. And when you watch TV and whatnot, you'll see the judge say, "Well, you can't bring that evidence in here." He can't do that in constitutional court. He can't do that. So you have trial by jury, 2 of everything, right? You have trial by jury, and then you have a jury trial. A trial by jury means things. It's by the jury. A jury trial means the jury is present, and you're in the maritime law, and the judge is the decision maker. And he will tell you what you can say. He will tell you what evidence you can bring in. Now, anyway, and we've just seen that, with President Trump. That was obviously an administrative or an advocacy court. So that's proof that there are 2 of everything. There's a citizen and a national. Hopefully by the end of this, you'll be curious enough to become a national, because we need to stand. We need to do the Archibald thing. We need to get off our donkeys. So the bottom portion of that is, again, there's 2 of everything. If you look at your driver's license, number 1, your name is going to be in all caps. If you go to a cemetery, every headstone, the name is in all caps, correct? That's because in law, that's the significance that you're dead. So when you look at your driver's license is in all caps. Why is that? Because they consider you dead because they have control over you. Right? I call a driver's license, I call it your corporate membership card. Right? I don't use my driver's license, I use my passport. And then considering that as a passport, we'll get to that later. But anyway, the significance here is, you'll see that highlighted surname and highlighted given name. Okay? That's God. My family gave my surname, or God gave me my surname, and then my parents gave me my given name, David Anthony. Now, if you look at your driver's license, it says first name, last name. So anywhere you say first name, last name, they're talking about the corporation where they have jurisdiction. See, here, as a national, they talk about surname and given name, because they know the difference. They know the difference. And it's always in front of you. So that's what we want to teach you today, is how to be free, how to recognize how to be a people. Free, and then how to be a person when you want to be a person, to gain all the goodies or whatever that the corporation has to offer. Okay, so the next one is a copy of a birth certificate. So this is a certificate of live birth. Now remember I told you they give you a number. So if you look on the left there, I have highlighted parents' certification. Now they have a lawful determination there. Now why would you need a lawful notification on a birth certificate? Does that make any sense at all? Yeah, it doesn't. That's because this is really a certificate of commerce, right? This is a financial instrument. And so you go on and you read that, it says, I certify that I have reviewed the stated information and that it is true and correct to the best of my knowledge. Then you look at 12A and I have highlighted this, words mean things, correct? Parent or other informant. Parent or other informant. That means that she is an informant. So the moment your mother signed that, she gave you to the Department of Commerce. And the Department of Commerce took this application, because your parent knew that, they took this application and then they gave that application a corporate serial number, what we call Social Security number, right? So I don't have a Social Security number. And you guys don't either. You should, as of now, you know that. You as a people, a man or woman created by God, you do not have a number. In fact, even somewhere in the Bible it says, sign of the beast or whatever, I'm not sure where that's at. But then on the other hand, when your mother signs you over to the state and they create this financial document, they make a corporation and they assign it a number, Social Security number, and then we have our whole life acted over here under the corporate jurisdiction where we have no rights and we must follow their policies. Okay, policies are not law. The Constitution was based on the Bible, God's law. That's what we must work under. If you want to volunteer to work under the corporate policies, you can. I choose not to, unless I need to. So how do you handle that? So then you go on the back, and like I said, this is a financial instrument. This is the only one that I've ever seen that. This is when my friend got the certified copy of his birth certificate. It says, and this is from the deputy recorder, I certify, it's on the back of that document, by the way. I certify this instrument to be a true certified copy. And this is all, it's on bond paper. When you go and get a certified copy of your birth certificate, it's going to be on bond paper. Why? Because it is a bond. Most people know what a bond is. It's a security instrument where people invest in and make money. So the corporate government, by permission from your mom, set up a corporate account. It's called a SSTKQ account, your birth certificate account. They set that bond up, and it's used in the market as of 1933. But in 1933, they took our gold and silver away, so we have no way to pay debt. So this is it's a financial instrument. Your mother gave you away. Please don't. Maybe she doesn't know, so don't tell her. Okay, so the next document here, if you look at the top, it is an official website of the United States government. It's E-Verify. And I got rid of my old passport because I had my passport as a U.S. citizen, and I applied for a new passport, a DS-11 application, and I asked for a new passport, and when I filled it out, where it says U.S. citizen, I put no. And are your parents U.S. citizens? I put no. Because that application for a passport, normally you are applying to be part of the corporate United States. And to be truthful, when you see the United States, it should be written United States, Incorporated. Because the United States of America is where I am. I domicile in the California Republic. Over here, you reside in the corporate state of California. Big difference, two of everything, right? So this has me classified. When you see citizen status, it says non-U.S. citizen. Oh, when I tell people I'm a non-U.S. citizen, oh, geez, what are you? Where are you from? You're from Mars. Well, some people probably from Mars, but I deny that. I'll never admit that I'm from Mars. But anyway, I'm a non-U.S. citizen. So really, what does that mean? They classify me that because they want your peers to shun you because you're not a U.S. citizen. But really, I'm a citizen. I'm a non-U.S. citizen because Washington, D.C. is not in the United States. How many people do that? All right. Okay. Washington, D.C. is not in the United States. Washington, D.C. is a foreign country. We'll get to a documentation of that a little later. So, being that I have not volunteered or consented to be a member of their Washington, D.C. corporation, because as a member of that corporation, I am a U.S. citizen, right? So they call, when I say, no, I don't want to be that, then they call me a non-U.S. citizen because they want to make it negative. They wouldn't call me, which would be positive, I am a citizen of the United States of America. Now that everybody comprehends, that's a good thing. But they don't call me that because they want it to be a friendly moniker per se. So anyway, I am classified as a U.S. non-citizen, and I just explained to you why that's a good thing. And again, I say they lie on the seat. The next document here is U.S. Code Section 26, Title 26, Section 7702 definitions, and the A1, person. We talked about persons a little while ago. Okay, person. It says, shall be construed. Now, when you construe something, that's not a good thing, is it? You're lying. So, their definition under legalish, their legalish definition of person is shall be construed to mean and include an individual, which, by the way, is not a people, by the way, if you look up individual. And a trust, an estate, a partnership, association, company, or a corporation. Doesn't say anywhere that you're a man or woman, does it? Because they don't want you to be a man or woman, because as a man or woman, they have no jurisdiction over you. They want you to be a person, so they have jurisdiction over you. Now, did anybody tell you that in the public schools? No. Why? Because it's not a public school for everybody. It is a corporation school indoctrinating you to be a good public corporate member. Okay, so next one here. Dun & Bradstreet. For those of you that don't know who Dun & Bradstreet is, Dun & Bradstreet was established in the 1870s. Why? Well, the United States incorporated. They gave up being a government in 1871 after the Civil War. They became a corporation. And then Dun & Bradstreet, shortly after that, established a business, an entrepreneur. And so basically, Dun & Bradstreet records all the corporations that want to be on their list around the world. So if you want to deal with somebody in China, Italy, Russia, whatever, and you want to find out who they are, what kind of credit rating, who their CEO is, how many people they do, how much their gross business are, you go to Dun & Bradstreet, you should give them a small fee, and they will tell you. But if you look on there, it says City of Turlock. That's their corporate number, the registration number at Dun & Bradstreet. County of Stanislaus, that's their corporate registration number. State of California, that's their registration number. This is what scared me when I first read it. Superior Court of California, County of Stanislaus, that's their corporate. So when you walk into those courts, McDonald's is a corporation, right? Wally World, Walmart, they're corporations. So at the moment you walk into that corporate court, you could be walking into Walmart and they have the same jurisdiction until you volunteer. You have to consent. When you walk in there, you're a people. And then once you walk in the door, you consent to become a person/corporate member. How do they do that? It is so simple. You're seated in the gallery, and the bailiff stands up and he says, everybody stand for the Honorable Judge Joe Diaz, and everybody stands. So the significance of that is you stand, boom. That's the significance of the just standing. You at that moment have volunteered to be under admiralty law, under the captain's jurisdiction. I don't stand up. I never said, if you don't stand up, the bailiff's going to come over. And you'll notice, if you sit and watch, when the judge walks in, he walks in like this. He wants to make sure everybody's standing up. And the bailiff, and if somebody's not standing up, the judge will go like this. And the bailiff will walk over to me and he says, you need to stand up. I said, I only stand up for one man, that's God. I don't stand up for him unless I consent, and I don't consent. And then the judge says, I'm going to charge you with contempt of court, right? And that's jail time, up to 6 months. So I was, Judge, by the way, which jurisdiction is that in? Is that under civil jurisdiction, or is that under criminal jurisdiction? He said, it's under criminal jurisdiction. Then there must be a contract. Somebody must have filed a complaint on me. There has to be someone that's harmed. So I want to see the person that's harmed, and then I want to see the person. I say person, right? Because they're corporate members. I want to see the person that has filed a complaint. And then there must be I want to see those three guys, basically. Who's charging me? I want to see what the harm is, and then who's filed a complaint. And then he goes, I can't produce that. And then you say, no, it's not criminal, it's civil. If it's civil law, then it's contract law, the UCC, and I understand that because you're a corporation, so I can understand how you law. So in corporate law, we must have a contract. I don't recall having a contract with you in any way, shape, or form. Can you produce that contract with my signature and your signature? We're going to put you to the back of the line, sir. And then you go through everybody else, and when everybody's left the room, because they don't want people to see what's going on, they don't want to see my standing, because when you go to tennis, where do you go? You go to the tennis court. I'm really good at it, by the way. So, when you want to play law, where do you go? You go to the law court. And guess what? If you play law better than that judge, who wins? I win. So that's why it's important that you understand the law and to understand the SMU, the policies, statutes, whatnot, which has to do with the corporations, has nothing to do with the Constitution, or it has nothing to do with me as a man. So when I go to court, I play law with them. The county hates me for that reason, because I stand. I used to watch Archie Bunker, so I stand and I get off my donkey. So, the next document there is a copy of the Declaration of Independence, and we have some constitutions in the back, little pocket-sized constitutions. You're welcome to take one. We ask for a donation for $1 to cover the cost, but we want everybody to have one. So the Declaration of Independence, who is in charge here? There's, as I told you earlier, a maxim in law is that what one creates, one owns. So God created us, we're under his jurisdiction. So who created the government? Right there, I have it highlighted. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, not persons, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government. Now, we already have the great documents in this document world, we're just not using it. So in reality, when people say, well, you don't want to destroy the government we have, well, yes, I do, because it's not government, they are corporations. The Clearfield Trust Company the Supreme Court case, 1942, the Supreme Court said that once a government takes on the form of a corporation, it must act like a corporation, which is contract law. It has nothing to do with the Constitution. So what we want to do, we want to bring the government back. We want to abolish the corporate government, and we want to bring the California Republic. It's there, it's open, Or the doors are closed, the lights are out. So we just need to reestablish the California Republic. Let's see. Oh, and people repeat history, correct? So if you look up there, I got number 10 there, because the Declaration of Independence, this document was a notice to the world, telling the world that we are fed up with the king, and they listed 28 grievances of what the king was doing, and this is why we are separated from England. And number 10 is, he has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither their swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. All right, so who's the classifications? New offices, EPA, PATF, you know, all the 3 or 4 letter corporations. Oh, okay, 4 more minutes. Oh, I'm gonna have to talk really quickly here, we don't have 4 more minutes. So anyway, that was a notice to the world. There's 26 grievances, or 28 grievances listed. And number 10, we're in the middle of that. We got police officers. When I was a kid, they were peace officers, that's right. And now they're policy enforcement. They're police officers, so they enforce policy. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court says that police officers have 3 obligations. Number 1 is the corporation. Number 2 is to generate revenue, i.e. tickets. And then number 3, they do not have to respond to an emergency. Probably the most important section of the Constitution that I really like is in Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1. And if you read that, it says, no state shall make anything but gold and silver coined to tender payment of debts. All right, 1933, they took our gold. 1964, they took our silver. We have no way to pay debt. So back in 1933, HRJ, House Joint Resolution number 192, states that being that we took your way to pay debt, because the only way you pay debt is this, the United States will accept your debt. So that's a whole other training source. Because the United States is supposed to pay all your bills, so you just need to know how to ask them to do that. Okay, next document reads, right cannot be taken away. They must be consent. As I said, as a man, you're under God's jurisdiction. They have no jurisdiction over you. They can't do anything to you. Nothing. Zero. Unless you consent. So if you consent to be your Social Security, to work under your Social Security number and be that corporation, then everything is for you. So you can read this again on short time, but you can see basically that, well, you can read it yourself. I apologize for that. We're blathering too much of this. Oh, I don't know, we need to talk about fuel. I always like to shock people into reality when I say the United States of America cannot own land. Because everybody thinks so, BLM land and Yosemite and Yellowstone and all that stuff belongs to the United States. No. In your Constitution, the Section 8 of the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, there's 18 enumerated powers that we the people gave the government. Okay, we gave him the power to do this. That's it. Number 17 is to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square may, by session of the particular states and the acceptance of Congress, become the seat of the government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, and for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings, which would be like a federal courthouse. So when you go out into the sagebrush in the middle of this thing, and then some forestry guy says, hey, you got the office? I said, no. He said, well, this is federal land. I said, no. You can't own this. I don't see a fort. I certainly don't see a naval yard, and I don't see any bombs stored anywhere. So it's not an arsenal, or it's magazine. There you go. It's not a magazine, and it's not a building. So guess what? You don't own it. I own it. You get off the land. Leave me alone. I'm free. I'm free. Oh, okay, I'll get off. If you're over here, you say, okay, I'll get off, because you believe he has authority over you, and he doesn't. And this is why, until they change that, until they amend the Constitution, they don't own all these Anwar and all this stuff. So when when Biden says, well, we're going to stop drilling on federal land, you know what it meant to me? Nothing. Because I know they're not going to drill in the naval yard in Fort or anything like that. But most people that persons believe, oh my God, we can't drill an arm bar. Yes, we can. Why? Because they don't own it. Okay, that's it. You can applaud now.
We're going to put a PowerPoint up here. And I'm going to walk around because I didn't get much sleep last night. Okay. How many people's brain went tilt? How many? I had to hear this stuff like 3 times. And so because I went tilt so many times, like I went to a conference the first time I heard this, and I went and talked to him over, when's your next conference? He goes, well, it's kind of like the same one. I'm like, yeah, I want to hear it again. And so I'm going to put a chart up there and kind of just break it down within like 5 minutes of what he just said, as far as people and persons. And because that's evidence. He produced to you evidence. Your birth certificate is printed on bond paper. Okay. Does anybody here pray? Do we have any praying people here? Okay. I look at it as people in person. So people is the higher authority, right? We're created by God, right? So the Creator has jurisdiction over the creation. So who has jurisdiction over you? God, right? Who gives you rights? God. We're created. It's called Creator endowed rights. So when we pray, the scriptures say that we are seated in heavenly places with Christ Jesus. What does that mean? That it's just fairy dust? I'm praying? No, you have a seat of authority in the heavenly realms, and you're legislating from the spiritual realm. So everything that I do is I'm making impact. I'm impeaching federal judges right now, working on it. Anybody hear AB 957? Transgender affirmation, the gender bender? Okay, we stopped that legislation. It only takes us one person to make a difference. One person, look what Billy Graham did in his lifetime. One person can make impact. So if we can get the PowerPoint up here, and I'll show you a chart and kind of just break that down. That's the evidence. So who creates corporations? What David just shared. The state. So who has jurisdiction over corporations? So that's the difference. When I go to Hertz Rent-A-Car, your constitutional people ain't going to help you there, because contract law is you have to be in like kind. Everybody hear of apples and apples and oranges and oranges. So if I'm going to go to Motel 6 and contract with them to spend the night, or if I'm going to go into Hertz Rent-A-Car, that's a corporation. So if I'm going to do business with them, that's where you put your state ID. So I consent to being a person when it's beneficial to me. But like I said, when I was traveling in San Jose and was flying up to Boise, and they rejected my valid, they said your ID is no longer valid. Then I says, okay, now I'm a people and I'm traveling. You open up that door. I didn't say that. I felt like saying, have you ever been a primary defendant in federal law? I didn't say that. So if we can get the PowerPoint up. So I'm going to read the mission statement. Let's go to, he's pulling that up. The nice colorful thing, the ACLG mission statement. This is what I've been up to for the last 10 years. And so the mission of the Americans Constitutional Law Group, ACLG, is to enlighten and empower and arm the individual with the knowledge and tools necessary to confidently exercise their God-given freedoms. Is it government-given freedoms? No. Their God-given freedoms across all facets of life, be it personal, professional, or spiritual realms. It is in a time marked with proliferation of complex codes, statutes, and an array of financial impositions, including fees, fines, unjust penalties. The ACLG stands as a beacon of liberation. So this is what we do. A lot of my templates have smacked down the IRS, one-page template. Okay? Someone that says they couldn't own a gun because they had a marijuana charge 25 years ago when they were a teenager. Smack that down, one page. lawful notification letter. Okay, so we aim to dismantle the barriers of fear and intimidation through comprehensive education, thereby reinstating the individual's rightful place of authority among we the people. This empowerment stance enables our students to demand accountability from our public servants, and ensure adherence to their oath of office. Okay, the ACLG champions the conviction that true liberty is not merely understood but lived. So once you understand your seat of authority, even the heavenly realms of a creation of God, I can pray with confidence because I have a relationship with my Creator, and I pray and I legislate, and He sends His angels because the angels of the Lord hearken unto the word of the Lord. Okay? So as we're legislating from that heavenly place, so we can be, you ever hear that? Oh, you're so spiritually good, you're so spiritually anointed, you're no earthly good. Anybody hear that? Like I can pray for the hungry person down the street, Lord, fill their belly. Is God going to manifest food in their stomach? Probably could. Send a raven maybe. But we have to do the work. Faith without works is dead. So while we're praying, because I think nothing gets done without prayer. So, but we have people praying for what we're doing, and that's why I think we're pulling off the miraculous on a daily basis, dealing with the government we're dealing with. And so when we legislate from the heavenly realms, now we need to exercise our seats of authority as we the people, because we're sitting here in the earth. So you got two statuses, people and persons. So when we're in the earth, we're going to act out and instruct our representatives. So this is what the Constitution says. The inherent political power is in the people, not in the person. The Supreme Court, this is really exciting because of all the bad news in all the courts. The Supreme Court language is completely changed. I'm going to read that later on. It starts talking about peoples and arms, not firearms. It talks about guns, weapons, and being one of the people. Okay. So, just to wrap up the mission statement, at ACLG, we believe that the journey to liberty commences with the individual, and it is an investment in oneself to walk in the legacy of self-governance and civic responsibility. Our mission is not merely to educate, but inspire a generation of informed people ready to uphold and defend their heritage of freedom. We need to reclaim our heritage. Are we ready to do this yet? Am I the only one that's ticked? Okay, join us and become part of a movement dedicated to reclaiming the living promise of American liberty. In 2000, after 9/11, I was fasting and praying for our country after watching that second building go down. And God spoke to my spirit and to my heart. And God says, patriotism will return to this nation. And in my mind, you remember when they were standing on the rubble with George Bush Jr. up there going, USA, USA. Does anybody remember that? Yes. I'm thinking, patriotism has returned to America. That's that prophecy you spoke to me, Lord. No. And I'll share what he said. So I'm a football fan, and I happen to hate the New England Patriots because I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Okay? So anyways, I'm fasting and praying, and I feel God speak this to my spirit, that patriotism will return to this nation. And as a sign to you, the New England Patriots will win the Super Bowl. And then I see this picture in my mind of a new logo than New England Patriots. Any old football fans in here? The old Patriots helmet, the old Patriots logo was a man with a colonial hat, and he was in a three-point stand. So I wasn't even aware that the logo changed, but this thing flashed in my mind. So I wasn't on the internet. I opened up the sports section. I'm like, where's the Patriots at the standings? Well, they're in last place. I'm like, did I hear God? Anyways, they won the last 5-6 straight games. Tom Brady started because Drew Bledsoe got injured. That was before he won his first Super Bowl. And they had that tuck rule. They had the miracle in the snow. And they ended up beating the greatest show on turf, which was, I think, 7 to 1 underdogs. I even tried to bet on that game because I had the inside scoop. And God wouldn't let me do that because I'd be praying over stupid football games, right? So anyways, bread and circuses, right? So anyways, so that was God telling me that patriotism will return. And I think it has returned recently. Because what patriots do, they stand up to tyranny. When John the Baptist was out in the forefront and King Herod come walking in, he didn't bow down to King Herod. He says, "You're a disgusting pig. You shouldn't be sleeping with your wife's brother." So patriots confront illegitimate authorities. And we got a bunch of felons running our country right now because they swore that oath, which is in there. I think we have Eleanor Provost's oath of office in there. She used to be a judge up here. I had to pull it. But anyways, so they swear that oath. And when you violate that oath because you swear it and sign it, it's called felony perjury of your oath of office. Does anybody realize that Gavin Newsom is a felon? It would take, I was on a live radio show and someone invited me to do a live radio show. Anyways, believe it or not. Like, what do you think about Governor Newsom did in the shutdowns and he went and kept his vineyard open and stuff? And we're like, the guy's a felon. If we have a constitutional sheriff with some testicular fortitude, you could go up there and arrest him. But anyways, here we are. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This is called Above the Line. So this is where we're at. God created the universe. He's at the top of the food chain here. He's the grand authority. So he is sovereign above those who rule. Okay, we are underneath God because we're a creation of him, and the Constitution is underneath us because, and this line is the oath of office. So when they swear that oath, the people below the line, they say, well, I do solemnly swear to uphold, okay, and defend the Constitution of the United States against foreign and domestic enemies. We have any vets here? Come on, thank you. That oath is still valid. We have domestic enemies that we swore to address. So we need to start addressing them. And I'm not talking Civil War. We can use lawfare. The very same thing that they're doing to Trump, I'm doing to 8 counties all across the country right now. I'm suing 8 counties. I got about 80 people that I'm holding by the neck underwater. I drained my local swamp in Pennsylvania, removed 11 out of 12 people. The whole township government. There was one good apple in there. And we cleaned house. And guess what? They tried taking my sister's property by eminent domain. They didn't get one blade of grass. And in fact, in the meantime, they ran out like $850,000 in litigation bills. We did. Okay, so lawfare. We use lawfare. We removed 2 attorneys, 2 solicitors, 4 supervisors, okay, and the engineer, just the auditor, almost the whole clean sweep. So here we are. These people serve us. And so what the U.S. citizen does is what David's saying is it puts you underneath the bottom of the pyramid. Pyramid, imagine that, okay? The Illuminati, I think I'm not even going to go there. We're not going there right here. Okay, so let's look at it. So these people serve the private. Here we go. Politicians. Okay, anybody know what that means? Poly means many, ticks meaning blood-sucking insects, right? Well, military, judges, lawyers, public school teachers. The public school teachers here in California used to swear the oath. I don't think they do, but guess who does? The superintendent of your public school. So they swear the oath. So if they tell a boy that he can go into the woman's locker room, and that's their policy, as you and a parent, does anybody agree with that? Okay. So the 4th Amendment says everybody has a right to be secure in their person. Okay? Under the 4th Amendment. If your daughter does not feel secure in her person by Mr. Johnston over here going in the woman's locker room, you file a federal lawsuit and sue your superintendent because he swore the oath. He's an elected official. And anybody working in concert with that public official can be sued too. Okay? And in federal court, so there's 2 elements of a federal lawsuit, and that's basically someone acting under color of law, like David said, in violating constitutional rights. That's only 2 elements. And color of law is a statute and a code. When I'm driving down through the crosswalk at the elementary school, the Department of Motor Vehicle Code is 15 miles an hour. We should consent to that. Does that not make sense? Is that violating your rights? No. So we consent to the code when it's beneficial for everyone. We need to be responsibly self-governed. Okay, so we have this list of all these people, And then when you go to the right, so they're in the public, which means they don't have these rights. They serve us above the line. Okay? And that's fictional strongman. Everything's in capital letters, like David Sherrod. Administrative justice. Anybody here ever been in family court? Don't raise your hand. Okay? A friend of mine, Chris Hallett, he's home with the Lord right now. He shut down Ector County Courthouse, family courthouse, 1,297 cases, void ab initio. They had to start it over because family court will violate all of your rights. Okay, the contracts are limited and lopsided. That's why when you sign your driver's license or you sign a government document, write UCC 1-308 because you're entering into commerce. So that's Uniform Commercial Code, basically saying I retain my rights. Okay, if anybody has ever been in a criminal thing, you know what they'll do is they'll say we need you to waive your Fourth and Fifth Amendment. You have to go up and make a deal. You never ever waive your rights. And so if you don't understand something in the contract, as long as you retain your rights, it has to be a conscionable contract because every contract has to have beneficial repercussions for each side. It has to be equal. Okay, so the statutes and codes determine the crimes and ever changing. Okay, so they're victimless crimes, right? Who's the injured party? Above the line, the crime means that somebody suffered injury, harm, and loss, either financially, physical, or to their property, or fraud. So when I got drug into, I was traveling down the road in Modesto, and I saw two cop cars in front of me. And I was on my phone, okay? Because I'm traveling, I'm not driving now. And I see these two cop cars inside, and so I go to put it down, and it slid down into my seat. When you get pulled over, I don't care what you dropped in your seat. You get pulled over by a cop, don't ever do that. Okay? I'm saying, so I didn't pull my phone out. Normally, you record, you know, and you're be polite about it. So I get pulled over by this officer, and you know, when I saw them ahead of time, I'm watching my speed limit. So I'm cruising by. All of a sudden, I look at the back. There's, you know, they light me up. I'm like, okay, I pull over. Officer comes up, mindless robot. Excuse my sarcasm. Name, you know, give me your license, registration, and proof of insurance. I had them all. And so I knew I wasn't speeding. I says, officer, why did you pull me over? License, registration, proof of insurance. I says, officer, why did you pull me over? License, registration, proof of insurance. I said, what is the scope of the stop? She goes, sir, give me your keys. I said, these keys? I says, these are my personal effects. They're protected under the Fourth Amendment. I don't think I'll be handing them over to you. Sir, please get out of the car. I go, you know what, officer, and I said it nicely. I says, I have a right to be secure in my person, and so you have a gun, you have mace, you have a club, you have handcuffs. I don't feel secure in my person. That's protected under the Fourth Amendment. I think I'm going to sit here. In fact, I'm going to request the supervisor. So the supervisor came out, and he said, we're going to break the window out and drag you out and just go such stuff. I'm like, I feel like I have a right to know the cause and action. It's a constitutional right. You're allowed to know the nature and cause and action because they have to have reasonable suspicion or probable cause that a crime committed. Who did I injure, number one? Nobody. But I'm like, we're not supposed to educate these officers on the side of the road, but you're allowed to have the scope of the stop, you're allowed to record, and you can ask for a supervisor. So I hand over my stuff, and they come back, and they give me a ticket. And I was driving in the daylight in alleged fog without my headlights on. So now I'm really upset because the fog had burned off, and they must have been pulling people over all morning, and they wanted to just get a little bit more revenue. So this is where my journey started, 2015. Well, actually that was 2012, but in 2013 I sued the judge in 2015. So I decided to go. This is what you got to do: stand up and ask questions. So now I'm $450. I was a little tight on money. I'm like, I'm going to fight this. So I did my paperwork, and I go up to the clerk's office. And so I walk up to the clerk, and I says, hi, Mario. Here's my paperwork. That'll be $180. I says, no, thank you. Here's my paperwork. I was minding my own business. You're dragging me into court by interrupting my day. Now you're interrupting my week. No, I'm not filing your paperwork unless you give me $180. sometimes when someone says no, if you're exercising your rights, you say no. So I said, excuse me, darling. I didn't say darling, but I was nice. I said, can I have your name and official job title? I ain't giving you my name, like total attitude. I said, okay, can I have your employee identification number? No, you ain't getting that. What do you need that for? I says, well, I'm going to pull your oath of office. She goes, what's an oath of office? I says, let me explain something to you. If you don't have an oath of office, you're impersonating a public official right now, and that's a Class D felony. And I said, if you do have an oath of office, and you're stopping access to me filing on the court, now you're violating my due process, which is felony perjury of your oath of office, so I need your name in order to charge you with a proper felony. The attitude disappears. What was your name again, sir? Mr. Pellegrino. Can I get my supervisor? Yeah, supervisor comes up. What seems to be the problem? You know what? I'm monitoring and maintaining a record of my interactions here. I'm keeping a log. I always carry my pen and paper. And when you ask someone their name, guess what? Now their flesh is on the line. They have to be accountable. So that's the first thing you always ask the public officials. What is your name and official job title? She goes, same attitude. It must have been from the, anointing flowing from the beard down to the body. Who knows? So none of them had a beard, by the way. This is 2012 thing. So anyway, she said that you're not getting my name. And I says, well, I'm going to pull your oath of office. She goes, what's that? So I just same spiel with her. So now the bailiff comes over because I'm holding the line up, right? Yeah, inconvenience these public servants that they're violating your rights. Somebody has to stand up. So this was a learning process. I believed what I heard. Okay? I didn't even understand everything, but I knew that I had rights and they were being violated. So bailiff comes over, and I'm looking on his badge, Mr. Baker. He goes, excuse me, sir, really nice guy. This guy, I love this guy. We shook hands after he almost arrested me in the court hearing. I'll tell you that later. But anyways, he says, what seems to be the problem? I said, this is the problem. I'm getting drug into this legal matter here because I did not have my headlights on in the daytime. So I'm trying to exercise my due process, and nobody knows what's going on here. I asked them for their oath of office, and they don't know what I'm talking about. He goes, well, what are you talking about? I go, you have a gun and handcuffs and mace and a taser. And I says, you have to have an oath. He goes, oh, I'm just a bailiff. I don't have to have an oath. I'm like, this is getting weird. I says, I'm not leaving here until they take my paperwork and I'm paying a nickel, and you're going to be my witness. You got that? Wow. He said, so she agreed to take my paperwork. So here, that's phase one. Phase two. So now I'm coming back to the preliminary hearing. And, Pellegrino, I come forth. Do you understand the charges against you? Just like David said. You can have all the evidence in the world. As soon as you say, yes, I understand, you know what that means in legalese? I stand under. I said, I'm here by special appearance, challenging the jurisdiction of the court, and I have just a couple questions, please. Before I can enter a plea, I have to have these questions answered. What is it? I says, did I commit a crime? She goes, yes, you did. I looked at the stenographer. I said, let the record reflect that I committed a crime. We're getting this all on the record. Because sometimes they take minutes, and they're not recorded depending on which jurisdiction you're in. And I says, okay, a crime. I says, well, who's the injured party? And she wasn't very bright. She said, the state is the injured party. I said, the state? She said, yes, the state. I said, the state of California? She said, yes, the state of California. I said, no, I have one more question for you, Your Honor. We'll wrap this up quick. I go, is this a state court or a federal court? Well, this is a state court. Well, I says, if the state's the injured party, and we're in a state court, there's a conflict of interest that's against the Separation of Powers Act doctrine. I think I'm going to motion to dismiss this case with prejudice. Denied. Excuse me, Your Honor, do you have a legal reason? No, denied. I said, why? She says, because I can. I said, okay. So I leave, and it's time to come back for trial. I was married at the time, and I brought my wife with me, and maybe that's why I'm single, I don't know. She's got driver's license. So she's sitting next to me, and we're walking into the courthouse, 200 people down there on Floyd and Modesto. They have us lined up like prisoners along the barbed wire fence inside the yellow line. We're winding around the building. We walk in there, and I walk in, and everybody's sitting. You're like at the deli counter, like with a little ticket, right? I come walking in there, I go, everybody in here's rights are being violated. And I sat down. Real quiet in there. Okay. So we all funnel in there like cattle and sheep. And I end up sitting right at the front over there, the front, and my wife is sitting next to me. I always bring a witness everywhere, don't by yourself, 2 by 2, right? So she comes walking in, and it's, all rise for the Honorable Lynn R. Meredith presiding. Please remain standing with your right hand to be sworn in. And right before he did this, I turned around and I looked behind me, and there was a couple of religious men sitting in there. They were exercising their religious rights. They must have been really important religious men because their turbans were like this tall, okay? So they were important. And guess what they were doing? They were exercising their religious rights because there's 2 rules. They're not laws. You take your hat off when you're in court. Remember that, Daniel, when I take my hat off? Anyways, that was another story. I won't get that. But anyways, maybe after lunch. And then you stand. And so I looked at the guys. I'm like, I'm going to exercise my religious rights. And I'm sitting there smiling. And my wife's standing up. She's like, get up. So she gets cracked walnuts with her butt cheeks at this time. Like, don't do this again to me, right? So she comes in and she looks at me and she goes to the bailiff. She goes, make him rise. And then that was a nice bailiff that he came over. Like, called him all on the carpet. He comes over and says, Mr. Pellegrino, please rise. And I said, really? I only bow and rise before my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. This is constitutionally protected conduct under the First Amendment. Now she's snarling, the judge. She calls the vice president. Chris, make him rise. Mr. Pellegrino, this is your last chance. Can you please rise? I says, Miller versus U.S., the exercise of a constitutional right cannot be converted into crime. And in the United States, there's no titles of nobilities. You know what I mean? But only public servants. And when I called her public servants, she gave her the nod. He goes, I'm going to have to take you in custodial custody. And he takes me and holds me back there until everybody else files out. Like David said, they don't want people to hear this stuff. So I came up and I deposed the officer. She didn't know her oath of office. She didn't know the Fourth Amendment. She didn't know the Fifth Amendment. She got off the stand like on bloody stumps, legally speaking, okay? And, you know, I motioned to dismiss her as an incompetent witness. She didn't know her oath. She didn't know the Fourth and the Fifth Amendment. I mean, these are things that the rights of the people. So anyways, it was pretty much a shamball. I got, you know, convicted of that, and, you know, well, it wasn't convicted. It was like, okay, you're getting this fine. So when I left there, I had some violations. And can we scroll down to the money violations? The chart should be 3 or 4 scrolls down there. And so under the USC, there it is, under USC section 3571 under constitutional provisions, it's $250,000 every time the Bill of Rights is violated. And if it's a county or a township, it's $500,000 under the same subsection. So how many Bill of Rights were violated there in the courtroom? We're not even talking about on the side of the road. When I prayed about suing the judge and the county and the officer, I felt like God told me to let the officer off, because I did embarrass her and give her an educational lesson, and she was just trained to do her job. So I dropped her off the case, but I sued the judge. First Amendment violation, right? They denied the free exercise of religion. I didn't want to stand up because that was my exercise of religious right, and I told them why I wasn't standing up. She discriminated against me because she didn't ask them to remove their hats in their religion. So we got a First Amendment violation, right? We got a Fourth Amendment violation because he illegally seized me under the Fourth Amendment. Okay? Under the Fifth Amendment, you can't deprive me of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That's the Fifth Amendment of the Bill of Rights. And they deprived me of liberty. They trapped me back there and didn't let me. So when you get pulled over by an officer, you're under custodial arrest. And I don't even teach this traffic stuff anymore. We got so much more bigger things. Keep your driver's license if you want it. But like David said, you can get an affidavit of status. You can get your national passport. Because try to rent a hotel room you can probably rent with a passport. But until you get that, you might want to do Congress. So I sued them in federal court, and that 45 seconds with that interaction, it was the First Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, and then she violated her oath of office. That was $1 million besides scores of public humiliation. So I sued her in federal court, and guess what? When I started doing discovery, one important thing, the big mystery was, why doesn't anybody know their oath? The oath of office is in your packet. We're under restriction times, but there's 5 elements of the oath of office in there. Okay, number 1 is you have to be sworn in by the proper administrator. Number 2, you have to repeat the oath. I do solemnly swear. You have to sign the oath. Then it has to be filed at the county recorder's office, and then you have to wait a time limit. And in California, I think it was 10 days back last time I looked. In other states, it's different times. Any of those 5 elements are missing, they have vacated their official job title. The reason why none of them knew their oaths, anybody ever get hired or buy a house? What's to do? You're just signing away. Signing those paperwork, I want that house, I want that job. They signed their oath, none of them swore in. So every stamp and every nickel that they collected down there, and their corporations, you could look up the Stanislaus traffic court, and they're making tens of millions every year. So every nickel they collected from any of those people that didn't have an oath of office, technically, if I would have won that lawsuit, they would have had to return all that money. So anyways, that was me testing. I went through and did a Title 42, Section 1983, a civil rights lawsuit because I had the knowledge. I took a 5-day, $500 course, flew up to Vegas, paid for my hotel, and my brain was exploding because of all the information, like the first section, right? You still trying to put your head back together? Like I said, the first time I heard that, my brain went on tilt. So above the line, below the line, you want to live above this oath of office, and then as a people, and then you exercise your rights. And then when your rights are violated, these people below the constitutional rights, to uphold that if they violate their oath, now they're primary defendants in a federal lawsuit. And it's a $400 filing fee. And so instead of paying the $400 ticket, I basically sued the judge. Oh, and by the way, I had to go back to pick up my paperwork or whatever, and Judge Meredith saw me. She was walking back behind there. She said, Mr. Pellegrino, why are you suing me? Because I can. Anyways, so, First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. How many laws can Congress make concerning the free exercise? So who had lawful authority to shut the churches down during COVID? Let's do an example here again with the Bill of Rights. Pastor Dave's up here preaching, the cops come up and said, Mrs. Kravitz down the street was looking through her little window. She knows you're having church. She called us. And so we're here to say, everybody leave. And they did this up in Idaho, of all places, it's called Moscow, Idaho. Okay, go figure. Anyways, so this is Bill of Rights training. So they come in, we're ordering you to disband. Let's say, you know what, we're here praising the Lord, we're exercising our religious life, we're here on our free will. No one's forcing us to be here, we're adults, we're going to take our own risk to get the cold or the virus or whatever. So, if they arrest some people who stay and arrest you, okay, what Bill of Rights did they violate? Someone want to get stabbed. What's the easy one? First Amendment, free exercise thereof, right?
Religion.
All right, so it's the free exercise, okay, did they deprive you of liberty?
Yes.
Fifth Amendment. Okay, did they illegally seize your person? Fourth Amendment. Did they violate their oath of office? That's $1 million right there for every single person. Okay? And then you got torts on top of that. And so then if it was Tuolumne County Police, then you would tack on another $500,000 under 18 U.S.C. 3571 subsection C. Okay? So this is the civil rights lawsuits. These are the biggest ones out there. And I got about 8 or 9 of them currently right now. And so I'm a Sixth Amendment, you have a right to assistance of counsel. So that's my official job title, is assistance of counsel. When we pull up the Bill of Rights, I think it's about 5 or 6, scroll down. Okay, so this writing is very small. You would think I would have memorized this after 15 years. Who wants to read the rest of the First Amendment? Does anybody have their Constitution?
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances.
Okay, I left out an extra constitutional violation where we peaceably assembling before the cops show up. And here's another thing. So you have a right to face your accuser in the court of law, so guess who else we can drag into court? Well, who called you? Well, they're anonymous. In the Constitution, there is no victimless crimes and there's nobody anonymous. You're allowed to face your accuser in a court of law, right? So what you do is when you get discovery, you subpoena the dispatch and you get the phone number and the address of the person that called to turn you in, and you bring them for working in concert with public officials to deny you your right to worship. So guess who gets sued too? The nosy neighbor that wants to act like a Nazi turning you in. Isn't that get me? I mean, it's your choice. I prayed about my lawsuit. The Lord told me, cut the officer off, cut her out, and I did. Okay, and then it says the right of the people to peaceably assemble. Did it say the right of the U.S. citizens? No, it's the right of the people. U.S. citizens don't have constitutional rights. They're corporations. Okay, is your head going tilt again? Okay, Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia having the necessary to the security of a free state. Capital S. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Anybody ever read the Ten Commandments? Shall not is mandatory language. It's not a divine suggestion. It's a commandment. Shall not be infringed is a mandatory statement. Okay? Did anybody hear about that illegal that had a gun and they took him to court? The Supreme Court says he can have a gun. Anybody hear that recently? Was anybody upset about that? Was he a U.S. citizen? Guess what? He was a people. Like David says, all these red flag laws are for firearms. Even down in Oakdale, it's called Fred's Firearms. I don't know any firearms. And I'm going to read the Supreme Court. Bruin is the new one, and also we had a nice circuit. The way the courts have ruled right now, we should be able to open carry here in California. I'm not telling you to do that because local prosecutors will probably drag you into gun charges. So, we got to use wisdom too. So, okay, it's the right of the people. U.S. citizens do not have a right to keep and bear arms any more than Walmart does. Okay. Fourth Amendment, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall be issued but upon probable cause, supported by oath of affirmation. I mean, someone has to swear within an affidavit, make a sworn statement that they witnessed you violating a crime. I haven't seen a good faith prosecution yet in a criminal thing, in a criminal charges, because they probably don't have a sworn statement from somebody, but that's a whole other long story. Okay, and let's move down to the Fifth Amendment. Nor, I'm going to drop down the bottom for time's sake, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. I'm going to back up a little bit more. It says, so the right of the people, it says, nor be deprived of life, liberty, meaning it cannot restrict you from going where you want to go as long as it's not harming anybody else. You don't have liberty to block the entrance of a abortion clinic. Okay, you're literally violating somebody's right to freely move around their liberty. So stay on the sidewalk if you're going to protest. You can't be blocking the roads like these crazy people are laying down because they're restricting other people's right to travel. So that's when nobody's rights are violated until it affects somebody else. Like if you say the word F-I-R-E inside like a building and everybody runs out, someone gets trampled, you're going to be held liable about that. So you cannot be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, and then they cannot take your private property and take it for public use without just compensation. That's a just compensation law. So when the government says, okay, everybody shut down their businesses, COVID, they're taking private owners' businesses and telling them, we're going to shut you down without giving you just compensation. Anybody have a business shut down? Lots of people did. Did you get a check? Just compensation? You don't have to answer that. But anyways, that's what these Bill of Rights are for. Sixth Amendment. Okay, I'll just drop down to the bottom. You have a right to assistance of counsel for his defense. This is before the American Bar Association, okay? The assistance of counsel is of your choosing. You don't go, what does the Bible say? Romans 12:1, present yourselves to God as a living sacrifice. Did he say, present yourself to another person to represent you? You go into court, you're having a lawyer, a bar attorney, represent you when you're present. And it's almost like demonic. It's like you're making an appearance. What do you do, just appear? Okay? They come out in black robes. I mean, the whole system's demonic. Ty can share some of that when he gets up later. What time is it? Someone ever watch? Okay. That's my substitute glasses. Okay, Seventh Amendment talks about cruel and unusual punishment, nor excessive fines. Anybody ever get a letter from your township or from your municipality? We're going to fine you $3,000 a day until you fix this problem. Is that a little bit excessive? Yeah, that's a violation of your rights right there. Okay, the Ninth Amendment. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the U.S. citizen. No, retained by the people. Meaning if it's not in the Bill of Rights, the Bill of Rights don't give you your rights. They come from God. Those are common law rights. Okay? The Bill of Rights tells the government what they cannot do. So your parental rights are protected under the Ninth Amendment. Your religious is under the First. So when AB 957 came out, I was burning that because you know what it said? It said, hey Tony, if you have children and they want to chop their penises off when they're 12 years old, and you're not affirming that, we're going to come in and take your child out of your household, or we're going to do mastectomies to 12-year-old girls. They can't get a tattoo, they can't buy cigarettes, they can't even eat the right foods without an assistance of an adult. Okay? So here they are thinking that they're going to give rights to a 12-year-old over the parents, and now they're telling people. I talked to an elementary school the other day, and the woman, she goes up to her teacher, young, elementary school. Guess what, teacher? I want you to call me Fred. Well, you know what? I'm going to call you what's on the docket. No, I'm going to be called Fred because when I get older, I'm going to get a penis. This is what they're teaching us. This is they, oh, I got it. When they're coming after the kids, that's it. They can take me out. I'm going to stand up. Okay? Suffer not anybody that causes harm to these little ones. Better a millstone hung around your neck and be thrown into the sea is what Jesus said. Okay? So I'm not putting up with that. And so she goes to the principal and says, hey, you know what? I think I should call the parent. And you know what the principal told that teacher? We have to protect these kids. If that's my child, and they didn't tell me that, that's violating my parental rights and my religious rights. And I'm going to sue the superintendent for not having a policy to let me know what's going on with my kids. And I'm going to sue the teacher, too, for working in concert with the superintendent who swore the oath. Everything's connected to that oath. And so we're going to hold them to their oath. Even if it is to the oath of corporation, they do swear an oath to the state constitution, too. And so until we can restore the republic, we have to exercise these rights. Because if they're going to, they either need to come out and say you're all slaves. Because the original 13th Amendment said this. Anybody hear about the War of 1812? You know what my question was in my high school that they taught me in the War of 1812? When was the War of 1812? I think I missed it. I was like, baffled. 1812, right? 100 congressmen got murdered and the White House got burned down. Why? Because the 13th Amendment says that no attorneys can hold public office. It's in your Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8, there are no titles of nobility. You can't be a barrister, you can't be an esquire. You know what I mean? There's no titles of nobilities because who's at the top of the pole? God, and then us, and then them. They're public servants. So, AB 957, getting back to there. Wiener, name denotes character, and Weiner and Wilson, they drafted this bill. And it passed through the assembly, the legislature, then it was going to the Senate. And I read the bill and I'm burning mad. God give me the okay. Send them monsters. It's back there if you want a copy of it. I'd love a donation. We're trying to raise money. We're doing a lot of stuff here. We served, Chuck helped me with this. We served 39 senators who was going to vote on this, that the bill was unvotable because it was constitutionally defective. And the Mason's Manual of Legislative Procedures in their own manual basically says constitutional provisions stand on a higher plane and are superior to statutes and codes. So it's the supreme law of the land. And like what David was telling you guys, they got you on the sea. They're using admiralty jurisdiction. Do you remember when that big boat came into harbor during COVID, the cruise ship? And it comes into Oakland Harbor, and I'm over there at church in Nuevo Pacu down there in San Francisco, and the boat came in, and then every news station, okay, we have this cruise ship, and they have COVID. So we're quarantining them, and do not let them get off the boat. Were they on the land or the sea? Sea. That's maritime jurisdiction, meaning the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. So a lot of this stuff works by, works by deception, works in darkness. It's legalese. Legalese is the absence of God's law, by the way. And so here it is. Here's the media making people think that the government has a right to quarantine them, and nobody thought about those people who were on the water, and then they're starting to go around giving orders, or orders laws. No. The Attorney General put out a memorandum to every single court in the country saying that you cannot use guidance documents and rules to have mandatory language. You cannot say you must or you shall. And they were telling you, you must get the shot if you want to keep the job. We got people in Allegheny County. So I have 24 federal lawsuits in Allegheny County. You don't think they're hurting? Their legal department, they keep on filing motions to extend. We're burying them in lawfare. So this is what we can do. This is the power we have. They're doing it to Trump. 50 states can file a lawsuit against that attorney general or that prostitute or that prosecutor over there in New York for bringing a bad faith prosecuted for violating our right to a fair election. We have a right to vote, right? Even if it is for the corporation, they're bound to those codes. The people below the Constitution, they're bound by the codes and statutes. We're not. So we're simply holding public officials to their codes, even if it's to the corporation. And that's why it's called civil rights. So the Title 42, Section 1983 is like a quasi type of thing. It's kind of like a common law, and it's also a statutory jurisdiction because it's under the 14th Amendment. Get back to the 13th Amendment. So after the War of 1812, they decided to write a new 13th Amendment. This is real history, folks. This is not conspiracy. And guess what the 13th Amendment is? We're freeing all slaves. And then we're introducing the 14th Amendment. And we're granting all the new U.S. citizens privileges and immunities. Right? And then they mimic the language from you can't be denied life, liberty, or property under the 14th Amendment, right? So the 14th Amendment is a person, and everything before that is a people, the right of the people, the right of the people, like we just went and did that. So now it's talking about persons that get privileges and immunities. That are privileges rights? Driving is a privilege. If you violate that privilege, they take that. You broke the contract, they take that license from you because traveling is a right. I had a right to get on that plane and to travel unmolested. And so I had a cause of action if they wouldn't let it. You know what I mean? And they let me on, but you got to use wisdom when you're asserting your rights too, because there's always another day. And if it is an emergency, don't get arrested. There's nothing glorified in getting arrested. But the problem is they're lumping us all in groups, guys. They're gay, straight, religious, atheists, Republicans, Democrats, blacks, whites. All this, they're masked, they're unmasked, vaxxed, and unmasked. They're cops. Support, Black Lives Matter. Support the blue. Does the Constitution give group rights? No. Guess what the most powerful minority is under the Constitution? the individual. We're not a democracy. We're not mob rules. Everybody has the same God-given rights. So the 14th Amendment is, we're going to free the slaves. 13th Amendment and 14th Amendment, we're going to make the rest of you all slaves too. Okay? So the only benefit for a 14th Amendment that I can see is somebody from another country coming here because they weren't born here. They don't have a right, by birthright to be one of we the people. But they can come in through the corporate side. So anyways, that's the Bill of Rights in a nutshell. And I wonder if there's anything else on this. Can we scroll down a little bit? Is it 10:50 yet?
11:47. 3 minutes.
Okay, we got Anthony coming up next. Okay, so anyways, in fact, I'm going to ask him to come up now because he came all the way from the Oregon border. Did you? Come on up, Tony. This is our special guest. I was praying about a week from he saw this flyer and called me, and I was praying because I had the best mentor. My mentor introduced me to coordination, and that's how we can take back local government, okay, through coordination. And so I wanted somebody who worked with my mentor, so I was praying, and I said, God, can you please send somebody who was a colleague of Fred Kelly Grant? A week later, Tony calls me on the phone. Hey, I saw your flyer for the event here, and I was going to come all the way down there. We started talking, I'm like, well, you need to come and speak. So I'm thankful for this. But so this is what I'm doing right now. I'm one person, or one people, and we have our group that's all, I merged the American Common Law Academy in with the ACLG, and what we're doing is we're impeaching federal judges. That template's back there if you want to get it for somebody else or for yourself to support us, or the remonstrance. There's scriptures all through that transgender affirmation that I smacked that bill down. So this is the right of the people to exercise their political power, okay? Do we understand how to exercise that political power? So it's the right of the people to instruct their representatives. Who's the representative here? McClintock?
Yeah.
He said this probably down at the county supervisor's building about 10 years ago. He says, you know what? If you don't like your government, guess whose fault is it? It's your fault. And I was mad. I'm like, you're my representative. What do you mean it's my fault? You politicians, you rhinos, you this, you that. I don't care if there's a D, an I, or an R behind their name. They all swear the same oath, and it's up to us to do our civic duty to instruct our public officials. And so a remonstrance, you have a right to petition, address, and remonstrate your local government. So when the First Amendment says the right of redress, who are we redressing in the First Amendment?
Politicians.
Government. Is that singular or plural? That's us addressing the legislature. Are the lights coming on? We think, well, I have a right to go before a judge. That's not the First Amendment. That's your common law right. You have a right to redress government. Do you remember when, who was being tried to stop to get under the Supreme Court? Was it Kavanaugh? So this Ford, she had an accusation against the public official, and what she did was saying, you know what? I'm going to remonstrate. I want to stop something. A remonstrance stops a bill or stops someone from taking office. A petition does something else. I'm petitioning these federal judges to be removed in Idaho. And the documents are back there. So we have a right to redress. So she brought an accusation against the Supreme Court nomination, and guess what they did? They voted, right? And in the whole time that he's getting grilled and being falsely accused, that I believe, I'm laughing at Kavanaugh. Because he actually penned the Patriot Act, which denies people due process, like our J6s that are still in jail with right to a speedy trial. So I'm going to turn this over to Tony to just wrap that up. That was a remonstrance, and he was being denied due process, and he penned the Patriot Act. So I was kind of laughing, even though I'm conservative. But anyways, the Senate was the jury there. So we need to get re-educated and be awakened. And so with no further ado, I'd like to introduce my new friend, Anthony Intiso.
Thank you very much. And thank Presbyterian Church for allowing me to come today and for you people to come here and listen to what I have to say. You've heard about the different methods that are being used to try to stop the tide of this corporate America. I believe that you can't defeat your enemy unless you know who he is, where he is, and how he got to be the way he is. So I'm going to endeavor to take us through a very quick, before lunch, history of events that happened from the beginning of 1775 to today that brought us to the position we're in right now. And then I have a couple of short little videos. I'm a graduate of Hillsdale University, and I made videos of all of my professors' lectures, and I have 2 one-minute excerpts and a couple of short 5-minute videos that I think you'll find very informative on the Constitution from Hillsdale. So let's see if I can technically make this work. What happened? Hello? Can anybody hear me?
Yeah.
All right, I hate microphones.
Don't hate it. Love it.
No. Yeah. The heck with it. Okay, well, I'm sorry to seem so disorganized. Maybe that long trip did, but I don't know. What I'd like to, a little bit of Benjamin Franklin humor there. This, yeah.
All right, so are you a little bit more clear between people in person now? Like I said, the first time I heard that, my brain just exploded. And but everything David presented to you is the evidence of it. And sometimes it needs to be explained 2 or 3 times. And like you said, your birth certificate, if you make a copy of that, it'll say void all over it because it's written on bond paper. And there is a Sister KB trust. Did anybody ever hear of that? When you're born, they create a trust and they put $750,000 when you're born. And then they take that trust and they trade it on the open market. So they're taking that, which is private, trading it in public without giving you just compensation under the Fifth Amendment.
Okay.
When Benjamin Franklin exited the Constitutional Convention, he was asked by a woman, "Sir, what have you given us?" His immediate response was, "A republic, man, if you can keep it." Yet most Americans today have been persuaded that our nation's governmental system is a democracy and not a republic. The difference between these two is essential in understanding Americans and the American system. Before we discuss political systems, however, it's helpful to address the confusion that has been spread about the political spectrum. Many have been led to believe that the political spectrum places groups such as communists on the far left, fascists or dictators on the far right, and political moderates or centrists in the middle. However, a more accurate political spectrum will show government having 0 power on the far right to having 100% power on the far left. At the extreme right, there is no government. The extreme left features total government under such labels as communism, socialism, Nazism, fascism, princes, potentates, dictators, kings, any form of total government. Those who claim that Nazis and fascists are right-wing never define their terms. This amounts to spreading confusion. Toward the middle of the political spectrum can be found a type of government limited to its proper role of protecting the rights of the people. That's where the Constitution of the United States is. Those who advocate such a form of government are really constitutional moderates. So let's analyze the basic forms of government. They are monarchy or dictatorship ruled by one, oligarchy ruled by a few, and anarchy, which is ruled by no one. In discussing these 5, we'll see that they can be narrowed down to even fewer. Looking first at monarchy or dictatorship, This form of government doesn't really exist in the practical sense. It's always a group that puts one of its members up front. A king has his council of nobles or earls, and every dictator has his bureaucrats or commissars, the men behind the scenes. This isn't ruled by one, even though one person may be the visible leader. It's ruled by a group. So let's eliminate monarchy, dictatorship, because it never truly exists. Oligarchy, which is ruled by a group, is the most common form of government in all history. And it is the most common form of government today. Most of the nations of the world are ruled by a powerful few, and therefore oligarchy remains. At the other end, we find anarchy, which means without government. Some people have looked over history and found that many of its worst crimes were committed by governments. So they decided that having no government might be a good idea. But this is a mistake, because as the ancient Greeks stated, without law there can be no freedom. Our founding fathers agreed and held that some amount of government is a necessary force in any civilized, orderly society. In a state of anarchy, however, everyone has to guard life, liberty, and property, and the lives of family members. Everyone must be armed, and movement is severely restricted because one's property has to be protected at all times. Civilized people have always hired someone to do the guarding, a sheriff, a police force, or some branch of government. Once law enforcement was in place, the people were freer. They could leave their property, work in the fields, and so on. In short, the proper amount of government makes everything. There are some who advocate anarchy, however, not because they want no government, but because they don't like what they have. They use anarchy as a tool for revolutionary change. The condition of anarchy is very much like a vacuum in which something rushes in to fill it. These calculating anarchists work to break down the existing government with rioting, killing, looting, and terrorism. Tragically, the people living in such chaos often go to those best able to put an end to it and beg them to take over and restore order. And who is best able to put an end to the chaos? The very people who started it. The anarchists who created the problem then created government run by them, an oligarchy, where they have total power. This is exactly what happened in Russia that led to Lenin taking total power, and in Germany, where Hitler's brown shirts created the chaos that brought him to power. But anarchy isn't a stable form of government. It's a quick transition from something that exists to something desired by the power-hungry. It's a temporary condition, and because it isn't permanent, we eliminate it as well. The word democracy comes from two Greek words, demos, meaning people, and kratia, meaning to rule. Democracy, therefore, means the rule of the people, majority rule. This, of course, sounds good, but suppose the majority decides to take away one's home, or business, or children. Obviously, there has to be a limit. The flaw in democracy is that the majority isn't restrained. If more than half the people can be persuaded to want something in a democracy, they rule. What about republic? Well, that comes from the Latin. Res meaning thing, and publica meaning public. It means the public thing, the law. A true republic is one where the government is limited by law, leaving the people alone. America's founders had a clean slate to write on. They could have set up an oligarchy. In fact, there were some who wanted George Washington to be their king. But the founding fathers knew history, and they chose to give us the rule of law in a republic, not the rule of the majority in a democracy. Why? Let's demonstrate the difference in the setting of the Old West. Consider a lynch mob in a democracy. 35 horseback riders chase one lone gunman. They catch him, and they vote 35 to 1 to hang him. Democracy has triumphed, and there's one less gunman to contend with. Now consider the same scenario. The 35 horseback riders catch the gunman and vote 35 to 1 to hang him. But the sheriff arrives, and he says, "You can't kill him. He's got his right to a fair trial." So they take the gunman back to town. A jury of his peers is selected, and they hear the evidence and the defense, and they decide if he shall hang. Does the jury even decide by majority rule? No, it has to be unanimous, or he goes free. The rights of the government aren't subject to majority rule, but to the law. This is the essence of a republic. Many Americans would be surprised to learn that the word democracy does not appear in the Declaration of Independence or the U.S. Constitution, nor does it appear in any of the constitutions of the 50 states. The founders did everything they could to keep us from having a democracy. James Madison, rightly known as the father of the Constitution, wrote in essay number 10 of the Federalist Papers, "Democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths." Alexander Hamilton agreed. He stated, "We are a republican government. Real liberty is never found in despotism or in the extremes of democracy." Samuel Adams, a signer of the Declaration of Independence, stated, "Democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself." The founders had good reason to look upon democracy with contempt because they knew that the democracies in the early Greek city-states produced some of the wildest excesses of government imaginable. In every case, they ended up with mock rule, then anarchy, and finally tyranny under an oligarchy. During that period in Greece, there was a man named Solon who urged creation of a fixed body of law not subject to majority whims. But where the Greeks never adopted Solon's wise counsel, the Romans did. Based on what they knew of Solon's laws, they created the 12 tables of the Roman law, and in effect, built a republic that limited government power and left the people alone. Since government was limited, the people were free to produce, with the understanding that they could keep the fruits of their labor. In time, Rome became wealthy and the envy of the world. In the midst of plenty, however, the Roman people forgot what freedom entailed. They forgot that the essence of freedom is the proper limitation. Government power grows, people freedom recedes. Once the Romans dropped their guard, power-seeking politicians began to exceed the powers granted them in the Roman Constitution. Some learned that they could elect politicians who would use government power to take property from some and give it to others. Agriculture subsidies were introduced, followed by housing and welfare programs. Inevitably, taxes rose and controls over the private sector were imposed. Soon, a number of Rome's producers could no longer make ends meet, and they went on the dole. Productivity declined, shortages developed, and mobs began roaming the streets demanding bread and services from the government. Many were induced to trade freedom for security. Eventually, the whole system came crashing down. They went from a republic to a democracy and ended up with an oligarchy under a progression of the Caesars. Thus, democracy itself is not a stable form of government. Instead, it is the gradual transition from limited government to the unlimited rule of an oligarchy. Knowing this, we as Americans are ultimately left with only two choices. We can keep our republic, as Franklin put it, or we will inevitably end up with an oligarchy, a tyranny of the elite.
Okay, that's a
That was
quick
good.
go through there
Go
of
back to
different
that.
types of government. Anybody see similarities to that?
Yeah,
today?
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So how, here's a question. How do we fall under the jurisdiction of a federal corporation commonly known as the United States? How did that happen? So let's take, because Tony's limited my time.
You can go till 12:30.
I'm just picking on you.
Yeah, we're gonna have an after lunch too.
So we're going to go through a quick review. I picked about 10, I'll call critical events that happened in history from 1775 to the present that allowed the European interests and the world bankers through history to make inroads into our constitutional government that started out in the right direction. So here we go. Okay. The first was the war that to our independence. That's pretty explanatory. Next, the second crisis that arose was slavery. The states, believed, the southern states believed they had states' rights to have slavery, even though it may have been wrong. So they weren't going to give in. So that results in the third crisis, the Civil War. Now that causes a series of events to happen that really changes our government in the early days. The fourth crisis. Lincoln issues his presidential order. What do they call it today? The presidential order.
Executive order.
Yeah, this is known, his order 100 is known as the Lieber Code. That is named after a man on his staff that his name was Lieber, and he had him write the code, which causes that first presidential order back then to be still in effect today. Martial law still exists. I forgot to bring it with me, but I have a copy of a U.S. Senate committee report. 3 Democrats and 3 Republican senators formed a committee and looked into, are we still under martial law? And this was done in 1973, and if I'm correct, the report number was 79-784. Anyway, and they discovered in 1973, we were still under martial law. So what happens every time we elect a president today? First thing he does after he leaves the podium on the inaugural address, he goes and re-signs that order and keeps it in effect for another year. Okay, so that's one of the things that happened. The next thing, he gets assassinated. So, as a result of that assassination, Andrew Johnson becomes the president. He is the sitting vice president at that time. Now, he was a states' rights advocate. He believed in very small central government. And the that was sitting at this period of time was not the full Congress. The northern states would not allow the southern states to sit in their seats in the capital. And they had some things in mind that they wanted to do. They had a plan. So, but they knew he would veto anything that they proposed. So what did this Congress do? This look familiar? Fake impeachment charges? That happened again? So they brought 11 charges against him, all of them false. They kept him so busy, they were able to do the next thing that really created the corporation. The District of Columbia Act of 1871. Now, a lot of people have argued that this was an act to create and incorporate the District of Columbia. And when you hear that, I'm going to show you that that's not true. Here's the evidence to prove it. I forgot which of the speakers mentioned the 10-mile square, but that was in the first Constitution. They wanted a seat of government, and it was called the 10-mile square in the first Constitution. And then when they had the article, they imposed Article 5 and had the reconvention and added the Bill of Rights, they changed it to the District of Columbia. And here's how that works. So remember the date of the 1871 District of Columbia, 1871. Before that, it's probably pretty blurry, isn't it? Well, that date is February 22nd, 1801. 1801. The District of Columbia Act was inaugurated, and then the municipality and the structure was done in March of 1801. And those two acts created the incorporation of the District of Columbia from the 10-mile square. Now, it's already incorporated in 1801. So, In 1871, they did another incorporation. But what was it? Here it is. I know you probably can't read it. It looks blurry to me. But when you write a law or a statute, the title has to be very accurate in its description of what the body of the act is proposing. Can you clear that up?
I'm gonna try. I'm not familiar with your thing, but let's see if we can.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And I'm gonna do this because that's been driving me nuts.
This is a copy right out of the Congressional Minute Book. Notice the title, Chapter 62. This is an act to provide a singular, government, a single government for, not of, for the District of Columbia. Because you can't incorporate the same thing twice without rescinding the first one. And that never happened. There's nothing in the records that they unincorporated the District of Columbia of 1801. So they did this act, and this is interesting. You want to know the United States. Being enacted by the Senate and the House of Representatives of the United States of America. And you won't see this anymore. After this is said, America does not come up again. In Congress established, all that part of the territory, the United States included, the District of Columbia created into a government by which name is hereby constituted a body corporate. There's the incorporation. That's the legal language they use. By the way, Congress uses a different dictionary than the courts do today. Courts use Black's Law Dictionary. Congress uses Bouvier's. They've always used that because it's different from Black's. I don't know the reason. I've been trying to figure it out. Anyway, they make a body corporate and can be sued, can be pleaded, unpleaded. It has a seal and it has the Constitution of the laws of the United States. So there's the reason we're in a corporation. Now, if you want more proof, there's a Supreme Court ruling, Justice Marshall, case 177-818, were incorporated for liability and money, and so Congress created a new corporation. They did this because they were broke from the Civil War, and the bankers told them, we won't lend a broke nation, any money because we have nothing we can attach. We can't take your nation from you. So you need to form an entity that's legally accessible. And that's the reason they did that, created that federal corporation. At that time, for the sole purpose of paying off the debt, providing a means to enter into a contract with the world bankers at that time. That's why they did it. And there really wasn't a problem because we, the people, in that period of history, owned the federal corporation. Because the Congress, the Southerners were let back in eventually. So then the Congress, the representatives, were all constitutionally sitting in their office, and they were in control of this other federal corporation. In other words, they bifurcated, split the government in half. Constitutional and corporation. And the intent back then was just for the purposes of satisfying a debt and being able to raise money. Okay? So, but what happened was Federal Code, CFR, Public Law 112-283, definitions, judicial, as used in this chapter, the United States, quote unquote, means a federal corporation. It's in the law. Now, at this point, you're wondering, okay, if we had control, what happened? Well, I've been trying to figure that out too. So anyway, there's Bouvier's Law Dictionary. It says that the United States is a corporation and all the other subsequent states are the same, or sub-corporations. Okay. Well, okay. Monetary, I'm sure most of you are familiar. This is the act that created the authority for the Federal Reserve Bank. But back up to that I don't want to confuse you, but something else happened in history. I just remembered. In 1871, when they created that corporation, they stopped and canceled all Indian treaties the same year they passed that law. I don't believe that's a coincidence. What the ramifications or the meaning is, I'm not sure, but it's had quite an effect on the Indian nations, as we know. But that's the year they stopped honoring any more treaties, 1871. Anyway, so then the Monetary Reform Act comes along, authorizing the Federal Reserve Bank. That allowed the bankers to really get their foothold into the country. And then, of course, COVID. So I thought that's cardinal language. I don't know. Somebody gave that one to me. Okay. In regards to the 1913 Act and also the Constitution, there's a lady by the name of Karen Udis. She was the chief attorney for the World Bank. And this fellow, Chris Kane, interviewed her, and this is a 5-minute clip. And you're going to find her, I believe, find her comments interesting. If it'll come on. Come on. Oh, don't tell me. Why it doesn't come on. Okay.
Welcome, Danbury, Bethel, and Richfield, to tonight's Chris Ponte Show for today, April the 28th, 2015. I'm Chris Ponte, and my guest tonight is Karen Udis. You remember, Karen is a lawyer from the World Bank that did a great interview with me this past January. Ago in the world, I reached out to Karen, and she was gracious enough to come up here from Washington, D.C. to appear on the show. So first off, Karen, thank you so very much.
Thanks for having me on again, Chris.
This is awesome. You know, coming off that first interview, I got a lot of great feedback, number one, because you dropped some real education on the people that were able to watch it. And people had questions about a couple of key things that they got from that interview. So I figured maybe we should start off by talking about some of those things, if that works for you. Everybody in the world has a bank card, and it works like no one's business because you can go to the ATM, you can get your money out, and everybody's happy. But something happens when you sign the back of your bank card. Let's talk about that. What actually occurs when a person signs the back of their bank card?
That's when you have something called contracts of adhesion. That's a fancy word for saying a contract that you had no choice to agree to or not. There's a fellow, Chris Mercier, who used to be the clerk of the courts in New York. And in 1985, he wrote a book about hidden contracts, that when you sign your signature card, on the very bottom in very fine print, it says subject to bank rules. And if you look to see what those bank rules are, there's a hidden contract in there that says that you agree that you are not going to go to a regular court that you're supposed to be entitled to go to under the Constitution. Instead, you're going to go to an administrative court. And those judges who are sitting up there as if they were actually federal judges are in reality in a secret administrative court. And they are not looking at you as if you were entitled to your rights under the Constitution.
Okay, now my question is, would these be courts where you would bring matters against just financial institutions? Or am I going to a court if I was charged criminally with something, provided I had signed the back of that bank card? Does that mean I am not in the real court, even if it wasn't a financial issue that I was in the court for?
That's right. You are not in a real criminal court. All of the courts are administrative courts.
Wow.
And I went to the Senate Judiciary Committee, and I tried to get them to own up to this fact. But if the Congress is not going to admit that they have been declaring a state of emergency every single year since 1861, and if they're not telling the American people that they're secretly under martial law, do you think they were going to admit to the fact that citizens are not going to courts of equity?
Right. Hook me up here on camera one if you can, Mike. I want people, I did not say this in the open. The phone number is 203-792-4101. We're going to be talking about things that affect the everyday person. The phone is hooked up and ready to go. And if you hear anything that we're talking about, any matter that you want clarification of or proof of, give a call and Karen will address it that way. Now, you mentioned the bank card. So just by doing that, you essentially forfeit your rights that we think we have under the Constitution. The Constitution evidently isn't really the one that we think we have, is it?
That's right. In 1871, the banks incorporated the United States and called the United States a corporation. And when they created the District of Columbia, what they did was they put that corporation in the District of Columbia. And they said that the members of Congress were actually managers of that corporation. And they said the President of the United States was actually the president of that corporation. So we're not living in the country that we think we're living in. And what I've actually done is I have said that we are under something called state capture. And I have said that there is an interregnum. And if you look that word up, that means that we don't have a legitimate government. And when the founding fathers wrote this Constitution, they realized that the bankers were trying to pull a fast one on us and to try to take over our governance. And
a pretty good video. What do you think? Yeah. Somebody, and as of today, I can't find her anywhere in the United States. I don't know if she's left or if they killed her. But she blew the whistle on the World Bank and what their operations were when she testified before the Senate committee here in 2016. Anyway, so we want to have our constitutional republic. So how are we going to do that? I'm sorry. I've got to go over here again. These are
When Benjamin Franklin exited the Constitution,
the separation of powers is extremely important to the founders because it turns out structure counts. They couldn't depend on the mere demarcation of written rules to prevent the accumulation of power. So they structured government in a way that would do it itself. And separation does three things for us. One, it prevents the accumulation of power by separating it out. Another, by defining powers into different spheres, it makes those branches focus on their functions and do them well, making laws, executing laws, adjudicating laws. And by forcing them to compete over those powers, it makes them serve the Constitution by doing their duty, which encourages constitutional responsibility. So the function, which we take for granted, is central, key to how the Constitution works to prevent tyranny and bring about good Republican government.
When Benjamin Franklin exited the Constitutional Convention, he was asked by a woman, "Sir, what have you given us?" His immediate response was, "A republic, ma'am, if you can keep it." Yet most Americans today have been persuaded that our nation's governmental system is a democracy and not a republic. The difference between these two is essential in understanding Americanism and the American system. Before we discuss political systems, however, it's helpful to address the confusion that has been spread about the political spectrum. Many of
The separation of powers is
When most people go to school, they learn about the three branches of government. Legislative makes the law, executive enforces the law, and the judiciary hears cases under the law. Now, those institutions exist and they still work, but many of the functions of government have been rearranged by the modern administrative state. The key to the transformation of agencies of the federal government from mere enforcers of the law to wielders of all three of the powers of government is the idea that Congress should delegate legislative power. Repeatedly, courts and agencies and Congresses simply throw up their hands and say, look, modern government would not be possible unless Congress transferred its power to administrative agencies. Founding Fathers, as we learned in a previous lecture, structured the federal government very precisely, and they designed institutions to do particular jobs in a particular way so that you had the task performed effectively, but also with regard to preserving the liberty of the citizens of the country. When you have that combination of functions that you have in administrative agencies, the safeguards to preserving liberty are torn down because now you have the same entity doing all three of the jobs at once. So on the one hand, the power of government has been expanded greatly, but it's also the case that
Roosevelt was president. He was in a wheelchair and hardly capable of thinking. His wife was running the country at that time. And they met these 44 nations, including the United States, and they created the World Bank. In doing so, they pegged the dollar as the reserve currency that we know it to gold at $35 an ounce. But what they didn't tell you is that if you look it up in the code, I had a hard time finding it before, but they quitclaimed by law all the assets in the United States financial system, including land, people. It's how the other speakers spoke about who we are. Well, this is when they put us all under the World Bank in 1944. And that happened in New Hampshire. This is just a little short thing here of Washington and Jefferson after they had retired, in reviewing some of their personal letters they had lamented to friends. They didn't know that each other had said this, but what they had each lamented to their friends were they were afraid that political parties would ruin the nation. How predictable was that? Here's a timeline of events that happened. Another meeting of the World Bank, the United Nations in San Francisco with them, and the UN tying into the World Bank. I hope I haven't butchered this. Thank you for your time.
So are we learning anything today? Good stuff. Looking forward to hearing more from you. I'll just do the handheld. All right, we're going to dismiss for lunch. There's Mike's Pizza down the street, and there's, at the junction there's some fast food. If you're late getting back, the first thing we're going to do is learn how to write an affidavit and do a lawful notification letter, where we're going to put these public officials on notice that they're bound to the code and they're violating their own code. And so, if you're not interested in that, you can have an extended lunch. Yeah.
Right. What time is it now? What time is it?
It's 12:30, and I think I have a program I give to everybody. 1:10. Yeah, so we got 40 minutes. So you're dismissed, and if you want to take a longer one and you don't care about the class, or we're going to post this on the internet, on our website. Yeah, the whole thing, aclg-liberty.com. But come back and when you get done from lunch, like I said, I'm going to start promptly in 40 minutes to do the lawful notification letter and the affidavit. It's 12:30.